The one big beautiful bill makes the Trump tax cuts permanent. The White House and the president are adamant that this bill is passed and that this bill makes its way to his desk. Republicans need to stay tough and unified during the home stretch, and we are counting on them to get the job done.
White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt applying the pressure on Republican lawmakers to pass the president's big, beautiful tax cut and spending bill. The Senate is spending the day today working through amendments to the bill as concerns remain over issues like cuts to Medicaid and impact on the nation's debt. Joining us to discuss, Brett Samuels, White House reporter here at The Hill. Hey, Brett. So we've had 2 Republican defections so far. The president can only afford one more. What's the level of confidence at the White House that this is going to make it to the president's desk before the July 4th holiday?
Yeah, Drew, I think the White House is certainly confident that Republicans are going to get on board in the end and pass this bill, especially through the Senate. The timeline is still a little tight, I think, as far as that 4th of July deadline. The president has talked about 4th of July, that he wants his bill on his desk by then. It's sort of a symbolic thing, really, more than any kind of actual important timeline, I think, that he just wants to be able to sign this by the 4th of July. But at the end of the day, I think, as you mentioned, there are still a couple GOP defections with a couple others who are still kind of weighing their options, saying that they're not committed one way or the other. I think ultimately, though, no Republican senator wants to be sort of the one lawmaker who ultimately sinks this bill. So I do think the White House is pretty confident at the end of the day, enough Republicans are going to fall in line to get this thing across the finish line.
What do you think are the most important sticking points to be watching right now? Is it cuts to Medicaid spending levels, or is it more niche issues like green energy spending and rural hospitals?
Yeah, I do think, Medicaid's the Medicaid provisions are particularly important for a couple of reasons. Obviously, because this is something that affects millions and millions of Americans, as Republican lawmakers weigh making changes to the Medicaid programs as a way of saving money, essentially, or paring down federal spending, as they put it. So for that reason, it's important because it will affect millions of Americans. It's important because it has been a sort of, as you mentioned, sticking point, a point of consternation for some of these Republican holdouts. And because it has become, I think, one of the key sort of lines of attack for Democrats, where, if this bill, if and when it is passed and there are changes to Medicaid, it's something I think we'll see Democrats really seize on and really jump all over and maybe make sort of a centerpiece of their midterm messaging if there is fallout and if we see Americans lose benefits or face changes to their benefits in some way. Those changes to Medicaid provisions will really be at the center of those attacks, I think, from Democrats.
I was pretty surprised this afternoon when I saw this tweet from the House Freedom Caucus that posted on X that the Senate version of the bill is not fiscal responsibility. They call on the Senate to make major changes. It seems like a little bit late for that demand. Are you sensing, is there a possibility that there could be some revolt from the fiscal hawks in the Republican Party?
It's certainly possible. I think, when the House passed their version of this bill, we saw Speaker Mike Johnson essentially kind of urge the Senate not to make drastic changes to the House version of the bill because the math in the House is so tricky. The Speaker can only afford a couple Republican defections or present votes potentially to still get this thing passed through the House. So the fact that the Senate version of the bill is changing quite a bit, I think at the end of the day, it could cause some consternation, some potential fireworks and friction in the House, where as we saw there, certainly fiscal hawks have even when this thing got through the House, we saw fiscal hawks in the House saying it didn't do enough to reduce the deficit, didn't do enough to cut government spending. So depending on the final product out of the Senate, it could definitely lead to, some more sort of arguing and fighting within the Republican conference in the House.
The polling on this bill ain't great for Republicans. CNN was just watching a segment that they had where it was 26 points underwater. It seems like Republicans are counting on Americans to start liking this bill better the more they get to know it?
Yeah, that does seem to be a big part of the argument. Sort of the argument that you hear from the White House, that you hear from Republicans, is that, sort of the core argument is that if this bill doesn't pass, the Trump tax cuts will expire, and so there will be a tax increase on Americans, and so that's why the bill has to pass. That's sort of the core argument that we've heard from the White House and from Republicans. So, I think that's kind of the argument that they've tried to make. It's been less clear sort of what the positive argument for what else is in the bill is, other than saying, that it's key for the tax cuts, it's key for border security. I think it is a case where Republicans are trying to kind of get this through. The White House has sort of shrugged off questions about very specific provisions in the bill. I think just a further sign that they want this to get done, and we'll kind of worry about the specifics and the ramifications later. So, the fact that the polling is not great is maybe a reflection of how this is kind of being handled and being, pushed through Congress, and the fact that there is so much in it that they're trying to get done, maybe a reflection that the messaging is not super clear and not super appealing to a lot of the public.
Yeah, we'll continue to watch these votes come down and check back with you soon. But for now, let's leave it at that. Brett Samuels, thanks so much.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it.